Good afternoon, everyone. You guys are the troopers. It's been a long day, and if you are on East Coast time, it's an even longer day for you, like I am. My name is Holly Wilson. I am an EPA in Research Triangle Park. I'm with the Office of Air Quality Planning and Standards. My specific group is the Community and Tribal Programs group, and we're in the Outreach and Information Division. So in terms of having people that do this work, there are people that do this work as their day job where I am. There's a whole group of us. There's about 10 of us that work with environmental justice communities, rural communities, tribal communities, etc. We also do compliance assistance for small businesses. I'd like to first recognize that not only are you still here, but the organizers implemented some of the tips that you all gave in terms of outreach. So apparently the outreach must have gone well because over 70 of you registered and you're still here. So that's check. They didn't make it downtown or in a hotel where there would be limited access. They brought it here in the community where a lot of you could get to. Another check. They had food. Big double check, because that's really, really hard to do now, especially in the government, to be able to provide food or coffee, and that's really, really important. Just like students can't learn if they're hungry, adults can't concentrate if they don't have coffee or nourishment for an 8-hour day. You have to recognize that, or they're really grouchy, or worse, they don't stay. So I want to give kudos to the planning team for all of those things. That's important. That's important. So in terms of community engagement, you know, you just saw it in action. So they're getting there. They're getting there. My group has been doing this training for a long time now.
Below you.
Oh, okay. Has been doing this work for a long time. In my background, I've worked at the state level as a training director. I've worked at the local level as a compliance officer, and then I've also been EPA for the last 20 years in outreach and etc. So I've been doing this work for a long time. I'm pretty passionate about it. I truly enjoy it. I love getting out. I sacrifice time because I know this work can't be done. My work hours, which are 7:15 to 6 p.m. So there's a lot of after hour, there's weekend work, there are calls that I take on my personal cell phone from community members. There are times that I'm called Mama Holly instead of EPA Holly. So that's a part of that relationship building that we're talking about that extends years and years and years, and I get asked more questions than just about air pollution. Charles already talked about EJ, meaningful involvement. We just had, Shalini gave a wonderful presentation on what they were doing in Minnesota, so a lot of the things you're going to see are repeated. That means we're getting it done. It's not perfect, but we're getting it done. We're moving the needle more and more. And as we work with communities, get more ideas, that helps us to move the needle even more. So we talked about the executive order, environmental justice affair, treatment and meaningful involvement of all people, regardless of race, color, national origin, or income, fair treatment, and we also talked about effectively engaging community members, allowing them to participate in decisions made about policies that affect their lives, their opportunity to influence agency decisions, to lift their concerns when it comes to the decision-making process, and to be a partner, working with the rule writers, working with the decision makers, so that we come with the best possible standard or permit or what have you the vehicle is for the best possible public health and environmental protection. So in terms of engagement, the three areas for my office are rulemaking and guidance, development, permitting and capacity building. My particular group specializes more in capacity building. We tend to have a background knowledge of rulemaking and permitting, even though we're not rule writers or permit engineers. We develop that working knowledge over time. And I can tell you there are folks that are outside this agency that knows permitting and rulemaking a heck of a lot better than I will ever know. Inside and out. Those years of experience without having the letters after your name, that doesn't necessarily make you an expert in this. It's finding out information and being in the trenches. So everyone brings something to the table. This is a continuum. I really like this continuum with regards to public engagement. It goes from inform to empower. There is a time and place for everything. There's sometimes, like we have a couple of rules that are applied to just 2 facilities in the country. We don't need to do a full consultation or involvement or collaboration because they're 2 facilities. We need to spend our money, our time, our efforts on petroleum refineries, coal power plants where they're plentiful. So on this continuum, when we're making the decision to outreach, we're asking our questions, asking ourselves, who's it going to affect? Who's interested in it? What are the ways that we need to collaborate? Consultation with regards to tribes. We have a memorandum of understanding that with tribes, we consult or we offer the opportunity to consult on all of our regulatory actions in a government-to-government forum. We do a lot of collaboration with communities, and when we get to empower, some folks say you can't empower another person, they just kind of have to take it or what have you. But our goal is to build capacity so that you can not only participate, but effectively participate. Everyone's time is worth something. So if you're participating, but it's not effective, then you're wasting your time. If we're getting comments on a rule, on a permit, that are not utilizing the current authority, or it's not reflective of the current data, or it's just totally just a form letter that's off base, that does no one any good. Communities are frustrated, the people that have to review it are frustrated, it's not helpful. So when we're building that capacity, the goal is to get folks to participate in a meaningful, effective way so both parties benefit from that. These are some of the tools that we have on our EJ website. Charles already talked about EJ 2014 and 2020 and EJ Screen. I'll go over the goodies that I brought for you at the end. So I lifted up these actions because they were like the first. So the mercury air toxics rule was the first time that we were actually acknowledging subsistence living, fishing in low SES Blacks and Asians and tribal communities. The PMNAPS was the first time we lifted up social economic populations with regards to asthma. The petroleum refinery residual risk and technology review was the first time that we started implementing fence line monitoring around the facility with passive tubes and reporting that information back to the community. The Clean Power Plan was unprecedented community involvement. We had gotten to the point where communities were having meetings with our assistant administrator. Never before had that type of access been granted. And that was because of all the engagement, the trust factor that started building up. So that was really, really huge for EJ communities to go in and have a conversation with Janet McCabe, our assistant administrator. I mean, staff just doesn't get access to her like that. So that was really huge. So in terms of the activities that our group does, we do a monthly email of regulatory actions. We're told that the Federal Register is not the best place to just, or not the only place, that you guys don't tend to read that or find that an enjoyable periodical. So we have a distribution list of over 500 folks, and most of the people on that distribution list are folks that have attended our trainings. We keep a list. We use the EJ listserv, which has over 5,000 people on it. So if you're not subscribing to the EJ listserv, I encourage you to do that because all kinds of information goes out on that. It's really a broad way to distribute information to a lot of folks. We have webinars, we have bi-monthly, my office has bi-monthly conference calls. So if we get suggestions that we need to have a conference call on diesel, or a new standard, or understanding the Clean Air Act, or Title V permitting, we'll actually pull together a webinar with the community, with the state person and an EPA person. And then our in-person trainings are usually for high-profile rules. In our training, we try to make sure that it's community-driven. There's always a shared power base, if you will. Whenever we're going to come up with training, wherever we're going to do that training, we make sure that there's a community person, a state person. When all possible, we know that some of those relationships are kind of tenuous, but we struggle and we try to get them there because those connections are really, really important. We try to get industry there. Your industry partners are really important. Most of them want to do a good job. Most of them want to be a good neighbor. Being a bad neighbor and a high polluter is bad for the bottom line. So that's not what they're really trying to do. Whenever they can put in their report to their shareholders or notices that they are a good neighbor and they can do a caption with the community, that's great for them. They'll highlight that. We are starting to do training. We've started doing training prior to proposal. Typically, we used to wait until the proposed regulation was out on the streets, and then we would engage. And we were told that's not good enough. We want to be a part of the process before it goes out on the street. So a lot of times, what we're thinking the proposal looks like after engagement, it looks totally different when it hits the street. And then we get those comments, and it looks even more different to the betterment. So some of the types of capacity building, the Clean Air Act 101 training, and a lot of these trainings, we have the resources, the documents, the materials in our office, and we share them shamelessly. I mean, we try to get them out there. So there's no need in anyone, how do I explain the Clean Air Act? I have a 40-slide presentation that I can email to you just like that with talking notes that you can tailor. I have a presentation on how to comment, presentations on the public participation process, on permitting, on wood stoves. So there's no need in you guys to reinventing the wheel. Get that stuff from us, tweak it, we'll walk through it, add, subtract, make it localized or what have you. But we have all that information and we love to share it, so we leave it. We also share it with universities that have community extension services so that they don't have to worry about developing curriculum. So these are some of the places where we've done our in-person training. Alabama, we go wherever we're invited. We try to go. To the extent that we can't send a full team, we'll send one team or partial team. We'll even draft or deputize, a state or community person to help deliver that information will participate on the telephone. Some of the trainings where I think that we've really made a difference, the petroleum refinery RTR proposal. And one of the things I want to say, when you're commenting or participating, pay attention to the title of the particular activity. RTR, does anyone know what RTR is? Risk and Technology Review. The Risk and Technology Review has its own set of statutes that you have to follow when you're talking about that. When you're talking about permits, there are construction permits, there are modification permits, there are new source review permits, there are new source performance standards permits. Those are really, really important when you are participating in that process because they all have their own set of rules. And if you are playing by rules for a different permit than the permit at hand, it's a waste of time. So this petroleum refinery RTR proposal, we did this training in New Orleans and also in Oakland. New Orleans was a community, and I won't say low capacity, but moderate capacity community in Mossville. They were in Cancer Alley, surrounded by petroleum refineries, windows being blown out so many times that they had plexiglass instead of glass at their windows. They're seeing these episodes. We had a petroleum refinery hearing coming up. They wanted to participate but didn't know how to participate. So we concentrated just on presenting testimony at a public hearing. We did role play, how to introduce yourself and talk about your concerns in 5 minutes, how to position yourself so that you start. There are usually 2 people that go up at a time to talk, and they're talking in front of the hearing officer and the staff. Those folks are stone-faced. They look at you just like this. You can talk about crying, children, dying puppies or whatever, and for some people, it ticks them off. It's intimidating. You could be pouring out your heart like these folks are saying, hey, we don't know anyone that has died from natural causes. Every person we've known from granddaddy to great-granddaddy to great-great-granddaddy has died of some form of cancer. And they're still sitting at. So we had to get them to block that out and let them know that it's not personal, but they are not allowed to react. They're not allowed to show any emotion at all. So they're like, really? Yes, they really care, but they can't show it. Okay, so that's making a difference. Now, when you come in, you want to stagger yourself so that you can continue the conversation. So this person's 5 minutes is up, and then their partner, 5 minutes. And then they had the next partner for another 5 minutes. So they got to tell a half-hour, 45-minute story in these 5-minute increments, so that the commission was able to get the full breadth of what it was they were concerned about. They worked with Sierra Clubs, who put them on a bus to drive them from New Orleans, Louisiana, to Houston, Texas, and then back again. They rocked that hearing. They were stars. There was news traveling far and wide, all the way back, about how well they did, how well they were prepared, what they got out of the training that we did, because we just focused on that. That's all. We just focused on that. How to introduce yourself and what is your lineage to the land of the problem. The Clean Power Plan, we did unprecedented outreach. There were folks that were just really upset at EPA because they wanted us to go further, and we can't. When we're promulgating these rules, we have 3 years. 3 years to get something done. That's all the courts give us. And we have to some way work that tension between what industry wants, what the environs want, and what the communities want to get that rule done. And that is really what's driving EPA, is to get that rule to the finish line by the compliance date, and then let what happens happen. But there was a lot of working with the states, a lot of working with communities, and like I said, getting them access to actually work with our senior managers. We brought them to the trainings so that they could have those offline discussions, which are critical if you're able to come to a training. So I would encourage you to just get involved, stay involved, and then post proposal work. The Port Arthur, Texas, another relationship that we had with the community. We actually brought the training there. And he got what he wanted. These folks were just fence line to refineries. The New Jersey Clean Act permitting was a request that we got. We couldn't go, but there was a community facilitator that we paid to do that. It doesn't always have to be EPA. We provided the materials to the organization and to the region too. We had a community facilitator that was trusted, respected, and had the credentials to facilitate this meeting, and we gave her a stipend for that. A lot of our trainings, we do use community presenters, especially if they've been in the trenches, and we pay for their travel to get there, so they don't have to get there on their own. Newport News, we did, that came about. There was a facility that had a permit renewal that was up. This particular facility had been grandfathered a permit over and over again, and because it was grandfathered, it wasn't bound to the current control technologies. And the community's like, wait a second, time out, we've been having a problem with this. And fortunately for them, they got in that window of opportunity where they could actually comment on this permit. They worked with a professor from a local university. We did some training with them within the state of Virginia to talk about the process. And then myself and a colleague from Mississippi did a separate training on where they should concentrate their efforts and what the approaches they should take. You don't want to bite off the whole permit. It's too much. So concentrate on record keeping, reporting, compliance. Is there new data out there? The permit ended up being paused. It wasn't renewed right away. So to have the permit pause wasn't our end game. Our end game was to make sure that that community knew how to play in that arena and knew the process and knew which buttons to push. So they did that work. And that training that we did with them was 7 o'clock at night. I had a wicked cold, but we had to get that training done before the renewal process came up, and there was a specific time. So we got it done. So the lessons that we've learned, create a safe environment. People are going to get animated, and when I say animated, that could mean, getting upset with you, but they're passionate. And you have to let that go and not worry about feelings getting hurt. You want a good, strong facilitator, too. A facilitator that knows both sides of the fence is a benefit and worth their weight in gold. Work with EPA, because we can pay for facilitators to help them on that front. We have contract mechanisms in place. Manage expectations, and like I said, the community, you need to understand which set of rules are applicable to you at that time. That's paramount. Everyone's not going to be happy, but can everyone be okay? You're not jumping up and down, but can fight the next battle because it's all progression. And again, like I said, we try and bring the regional, the state, local agency voices and use those green groups. We try to apply, do lots of advanced, notice when we're doing our phone calls, we'll use the EJ listservs, our own listservs, to get the word out. We'll use operated assistance calls. We're not always driving the agenda, and that's not our goal to always drive the agenda. There's some things that are appropriate that need to come from EPA, but everything doesn't have to be around EPA. The public attacks, that is what kept those scientists and engineers like Dan in the office. Because, like I said, some of those meetings and the passion and the injustice from years gone by and deaths just come at you. And so you have to listen and not hear necessarily the anger of the words, but hear the words. What's going on? Why is this person so doggone upset? And it could be because I don't know anyone that's ever died from natural causes. Everyone in my family has died from cancer. Well, I'd be ticked too if no one lived out their lifespan. So you've got to recognize that, be sensitive to that, and just let it go. And once it's gone, once it blows over and they get it off their chest, I just needed you to hear me. I'm like, okay, now where do we go from here? What can we do? And we roll up our sleeves and we settle in and we move. As much as we would like to do, there's some of us that go out there, we see these tours and we're looking at the conditions and our hearts are bleeding. And, you know, the rookies, and I was rookies because I've done this before, but I'm not a rookie anymore, is you promise more than you can deliver. That is a step that the community will do sometimes because they really want to be a partner with EPA, and sometimes you'll get from the state agencies. So you have to kind of keep your emotions in check and not do that. And building these relationships means being responsive. So that's why some folks have my personal cell, especially if I'm working on an issue with them. But that's a two-way street. And then those are just the core values. So before I leave, I brought a lot of goodies with me. But in terms of the other things I want to let you all know is when you build those relationships, and I told you sometimes I get calls beyond air pollution. Because I work across agencies, because I work in a lot of different media offices, because of just the nature of my outreach work, I am privy to lots of things like grants coming out. Robert Wood Johnson Foundation now is giving grants to community leaders to solve, they call them wicked problems, with a stipend. And the stipend is a few $1,000s. You apply and they're doing more training. They want to get into the EJ world. They have a lot of money, so I encourage you to go on their website or just call me later and ask me about that program. They've already done their announcement for this year, but they'll be doing another one next year. It's usually a team of 6, and the 6 have different background, and they always include community folks on those teams. So that there are a lot of foundations that are trying to get in, that are starting to get into the EJ world. The NIHS, the National Institute of Environmental Health Sciences, they're looking for communities to help review community grants. It's a great way to find out what people are looking for in those grants, and they do pay you for your time. They are in desperate need. They don't get enough community folks to participate on those grant review panels. So that's a great way to start getting involved. And like I said, as long as you know what the rules are, you can play a lot more effectively. And so that's how you get yourself plugged in. This is the art of commenting. It is a great resource for taking apart a regulatory action and breaking it down. You partner with folks, these 700-page, 1,000-page rules, you're not going to be able to digest and comment in the 60-day period comment time. It's just not happening. I tried reading the petroleum refinery rule just to go through it's not happening. But what you want is the impact statement. The impact statement is a summary. Start with that. It tells you why they're doing that action, what they're hoping to gain, what they're looking at. So if you want to read the rule, go right ahead. But start with the impact statement. Air quality sensors are coming out. It's the next best thing. They range anywhere. These smaller sensors from $100 to $500. They're great ways to do localized screening, get those hot spots. The Air Office is starting to ramp up. Region 2 is really strong in that. They have a loan program. There are grants out there. We're not going to have money to do those big monitors. And the big monitors are for national perspectives. These little sensors are up and coming, and these are going to be a great tool for you guys. How to do a study design if you're working with those sensors in lay terms. Rochelle did a wonderful job. Again, call me about it if you want, but how to do a study design to make sure that you are measuring what you want and that you're getting at your problem. The ECOS green report that Charles mentioned, it has ECOS or the state commissioners. They have case studies in this. Take a copy with it. It's a really good report. The EPA are promising practices on incorporating EJ into permits. This is a really good document. I'm sorry it's not pretty. Money is tight. But I have this for you all. Some of you are interested in finding out what we did in the petroleum refinery rule around fence line monitoring. Here is a PowerPoint that we did for communities to explain that. And then lastly, I can get electronic copies. This is, the Office of Research and Development had a group provide advice to EPA on how to utilize citizen science and sensors. This is their advice to EPA, but it could be adapted at the state level, local level, communities. If you're interested in doing citizen science, this is a great document. So I don't want to take this back with me to North Carolina. I just brought this with me. These are wonderful tools, and I have more at home. And then I have my business card. So feel free to get this. And if you need more, we have more. Or I know someone who knows someone that can get more.